I would be deadly happy if you subscribe to my channel, leave a thumbs up, and drop a comment. Welcome, my name is Lethal Relief, and I would like to tell you 3 stories. The sun scorched my skin as I stepped out of the office building in Denver after a full day of battling spreadsheets in Excel. I'm 29 years old, working as a data analyst at a small insurance company, and my blonde hair always ends the day in a mess, tied up carelessly with a rubber band. That Friday afternoon, around 4:30 p.m., I felt like a wreck. My back ached from sitting, and my eyes burned from staring at the screen. All I wanted was to get back to my small apartment on Maple Street, kick off these uncomfortable black heels, and fall asleep to a TV show. At the exit, Jess and Lisa, my co-workers, stopped me. "Sarah, coming for a drink?" Jess called out, adjusting her bag. Her red curls shimmered in the sunlight. "Not today, I'm exhausted," I replied, forcing a smile. "Maybe Saturday." "Okay, but Saturday we're doing a bar crawl," Lisa said, winking at me. "Starting at O'Malley's, then we'll see where the night takes us." "Sounds like a plan," I nodded. "See you tomorrow, girls. Stay safe." "You too," they called back as I walked toward the curb where a taxi was waiting. The black Toyota with tinted windows looked a bit neglected. The paint was peeling in spots, and inside the air was thick with the smell of tobacco mixed with something sour. The driver, a man in his 50s with greasy graying hair and a face lined with deep wrinkles, barely glanced at me as I got in. "Where to?" he asked. His voice was low and raspy, like someone who had smoked cheap cigarettes for years. "Downtown, Maple Street 12, I answered, fastening my seatbelt. The door closed with a soft click and the central lock engaged. I pulled the handle. Nothing. A slight chill ran through my stomach, but I figured it was standard. We drove off. The sun reflected off the windows, casting sharp glares on the dashboard. A crumpled Marlboro pack lay on the floor, and a piece of gray duct tape hung from the back of the driver's seat. We sat in silence for a moment before he glanced at me in the mirror. "Tough day, huh?" he muttered. "Yeah, you could say that," I murmured, adjusting my bag. "A lot of paperwork." "I know the feeling. People think life is easy until it punches them in the face," he said, turning onto a side street. I frowned. This wasn't my usual route. Rather than broad avenues, we were driving down a narrow road lined with warehouses. The tinted windows made the outside world look distorted, unreal. "And you?" I asked, trying to break the growing tension. "Did you have a tough day too?" He let out a dry chuckle. "I have a tough life, not just a tough day. You know what I was doing when I was your age? Beating my wife." My heart stopped. I looked at him in the mirror, but his eyes stayed on the road. "Excuse me?" I choked out, unsure if I even wanted to hear more. "Yeah, I beat her," he repeated calmly. "One time I hit her so hard I broke her nose. She screamed she was gonna leave me, but where would she go? I locked her in the bedroom for 3 days. No food, just tap water. She learned respect." The blood drained from my face. My hands trembled, but I clenched my bag tighter. "That's horrible," I said quietly, trying to keep my voice steady. "The kids got theirs too," he continued, as if he were talking about his weekend plans. "My son spilled juice on the carpet. He was about 8. I took my belt and beat him so hard he couldn't sit for a week. And once, I set my daughter's dolls on fire in the yard. She screamed like she was being slaughtered, but after that, she listened." His words pounded in my head. The road kept getting narrower. Abandoned buildings, empty lots, no people in sight. I yanked the door handle again, harder. Nothing. The windows were like walls. I reached into my bag for my phone. No signal. My heart was pounding like a hammer. "Sir, could you let me out?" I asked, forcing my voice to stay calm. "I forgot something at work." He smiled in the mirror, but his eyes were ice cold. "We're not there yet. Relax, I'll tell you more. You know what I did when my wife finally ran away? I found her at her sister's, dragged her by the hair into my car, and drove her to the lake, tied her to a tree, and then— "Stop the car!" I screamed, pounding on the window. Nothing. He turned his head and glared at me. "Don't interrupt me," he growled. He turned into an alley between abandoned warehouses. The sun was still shining, but it was darker here, shadows stretching over the car like a web. I was breathing too fast, way too fast. My mind raced. A pack of cigarettes, duct tape, a thermos next to him. I have to do something. "I'm sorry," I said softly, my voice shaking. "I didn't mean to offend you. Please keep talking." "All right then," he muttered. "So I tied her to a tree and beat her until she stopped moving. Thought she was dead, but she survived. The kids tried to defend her after that, so one time I locked them in the basement for 2 days. No light. They howled like dogs. I grabbed the thermos and swung it as hard as I could at the back of his head. Crack. A grunt. He lost control of the wheel. I hit him again, harder, feeling the metal sink into his skull. Blood sprayed onto his neck. I struck a third time. The car swerved, crashed into a post and stopped. The world spun. Adrenaline, fear, everything blurred together. I opened my eyes, then blacked out. I woke up sometime later. Minutes, hours. The sun was lower, but still there. The driver was slumped over the wheel, wheezing. Blood dripped onto the seat. My hand was bleeding, cut from the thermos, glass, or something else. It hurt like hell, but I was alive. I yanked the door handle. Still locked. The keys were in the ignition. I pulled them out, hit the unlock button. Click. The door released. I stumbled out onto the gravel, tripping. My ankle twisted. A sharp pain shot through me with every step. I heard movement in the taxi. "Get up, Sarah, get up," I screamed in my head. I limped forward until I reached a wider street. There was a repair shop, a small, grimy place, but open. A mechanic in overalls looked at me like I was a ghost. "Help. He locked me in," I gasped, clutching my hand. Blood dripped onto the ground. The police arrived 15 minutes later. They found the taxi empty a few blocks away. In the trunk, tape, rope, a knife. I gave my statement, but they never caught him. I went home, hand stitched up, ankle wrapped. Slept with a knife under my pillow. But I woke up every night hearing his voice. I escaped, yes, but my hand still aches, and the fear never left me. I know he's out there, and he knows my name. The rain was pouring down like a waterfall, drumming against the roof of my old pickup. I sat at the corner of the street in a small town near Toronto, staring through the blurred city lights on the windshield. The wipers barely kept up, and my hands were trembling. Not from the cold, but from rage. I'm 34, have spent the last 6 years working as a warehouseman in a construction supply depot. An ordinary job, an ordinary life. Until last month, when I found messages on Anna's phone. My wife, the woman I had loved for a decade, had been sleeping with James Carter, the director of Carter Logistics. That arrogant suit had destroyed my world, and now I was sitting here in this rust bucket on wheels, planning how to get to him. A taxi appeared in my rearview mirror, a yellow sedan, a bit battered but still running. I knew Carter liked taking cabs. "It relaxes me," he wrote to her in those sweet little texts. The perfect way to get to him. The driver, a bald man in his 50s, stood under a bus stop shelter smoking a cigarette. The rain blurred everything. The street, the people, my conscience. That worked for me. I stepped out, pulling my hood over my head. In my jacket pocket, I clenched a wrench. Heavy, cold, straight from my workshop. My heart pounded like a hammer, but my legs carried me forward on their own. I approached the taxi driver, pretending to be lost. "Hey, excuse me, I got a little lost," I said, raising my voice over the rain. "Are you heading downtown?" He squinted at me. "Sure, hop in." "Where exactly?" "Not far, I'll tell you on the way," I muttered, sliding into the back seat. The inside smelled of damp leather and cheap cigarettes. He got back behind the wheel, stubbed out his cigarette against his shoe, and started the engine. "Hell of a rain," he muttered as we pulled away. The rain pounded against the roof, and I tightened my grip on the wrench. "Yeah, nasty weather," I replied, watching him in the rearview mirror. His face was tired, lined with wrinkles. Just an ordinary guy like I used to be. "Turn right here," I instructed, pointing to a narrow road leading into the woods. "Here? There's nothing there," he noted, but turned anyway. The road was narrow, slick, surrounded by pine trees. Sweat trickled down my back despite the cold. "I've got something to take care of," I said, my voice faltering slightly. "Not far." "All right, your call," he muttered, slowing down for potholes. The taxi bounced and I felt adrenaline flooding my veins. I pulled the wrench from my pocket, my hands trembled, but there was no turning back. I swung and struck him on the side of the head. He screamed, jerked the wheel, and I hit him again, harder. Blood splattered onto the dashboard, red in the dim glow of the instruments. The car swerved, hit a tree, and stopped. "What the?" he groaned, but I struck a third time, aiming for his neck. He slumped into the seat, groaned softly, then fell silent. I was panting like after a marathon, my head pounding. The rain drowned everything, my thoughts, his breath, my conscience. I got out and pulled open his door. He was alive but unconscious, blood dripping onto his jacket. I grabbed him under the arms, dragging him onto the wet grass. He was heavier than I expected. My feet slipped and the rain blurred my vision. I searched his pockets, keys, phone, wallet. A sports bag lay in the trunk. I shoved him inside, slammed the lid. My heart was racing, but I felt a strange relief. One step done. I slid into the driver's seat, wiped the blood off with my sleeve. The rain smeared red streaks across the glass. I started the engine and headed back to the city, my hands shaking on the wheel. My mind focused on one thing: Carter. He always ordered a cab from his office at 6 p.m. I knew that from her messages. I parked near Carter Logistics, a glass high-rise in the city center. The rain hadn't let up. Visibility was like looking through fog, lights reflecting in puddles. Right on time, he stepped out, tall, in a gray coat, carrying a black umbrella. I confirmed the ride in the app and pulled up. He opened the door and got in. "Good evening," he said, shaking off his umbrella. His voice was smooth, confident. "Lakeshore Drive, please." "Sure," I muttered, driving off. In the rearview mirror, I watched his face, clean-shaven with a light stubble, eyes like a predator. A man who had it all. Terrible weather, huh? He made small talk, settling into his seat. "But I like taxis. It's relaxing. Work, wife, kids, responsibilities. Sometimes I need a break from it all." "Yeah, I get that," I said quietly, gripping the wheel. I felt my anger bubbling inside me like acid. "You probably know what I mean," he continued, staring out the window. "Ordinary job, ordinary life. Taxis are a little luxury, right?" "Something like that," I said, turning onto a side street. The rain pounded on the roof. I was waiting for the moment. "Hey, this isn't the right way," he frowned. "Where are you going?" "I know a shortcut," I lied, looking at him in the mirror. "I know who you are, Carter. I know about you and Anna." He was silent for a second, then laughed, loudly, arrogantly. "Oh, we got ourselves a detective. What, you think you're the first to notice? Do you even know where your wife was last night? With me again?" and we laughed at you together. Poor Mark, stacking lumber in his warehouse while I have fun with the real man," he mocked, imitating her voice. "Come on, man. Go back to your warehouse." My blood boiled, my hands trembled. "Shut up," I growled, stopping the car on an empty road. The rain poured in torrents, blurring everything. "I know everything. You slept with my wife, you ruined my life. Oh, what a tragedy," he scoffed, rolling his eyes. "And what now? You gonna hit me? Please, Mark, you're pathetic. She told me herself you're as dull as dishwater." Something inside me snapped. I reached for the wrench, but then I saw it. My wedding ring on the seat beside him. It must have fallen when I struggled with the driver. He picked it up, rolling it between his fingers. "Is this yours?" he asked, his smirk fading. "Where's the driver, Mark?" "Get out, Carter," I said, opening his door. The wrench in my hand gleamed under the streetlights. Time to settle this. He stepped out slowly, umbrella in one hand, phone in the other. "You think you'll take me down?" he sneered. "I have people who will find you in 5 minutes." I lunged at him, swinging the wrench, but he dodged. Fast bastard. He struck me with the umbrella, hard, and blood splattered from my nose. I crashed onto the wet asphalt, rain pouring into my eyes. I tried to get up, but he kicked me in the stomach, sending the wrench flying. "You're pathetic," he said, wiping his mouth. "Anna was right. Go home, cuck. Or better yet, to a cell when they find that poor guy in the trunk." He walked off into the rain, calling for help. 15 minutes later, the cops arrived. Carter called them. I sat in a holding cell while he walked away, laughing at my failure. My revenge had failed. He outplayed me. I lost Anna, my dignity, my freedom, everything. The fog covered the road like a thick blanket as I drove my taxi through the rural outskirts near Vancouver. It was 11:30 p.m., the night as black as tar, with only my headlights cutting through the gray curtain. I'm 37 years old, and I've been driving people around for a decade. It's my whole life. I've never had a wife, a girlfriend, or anything serious. My mom always said, "Danny, find someone or I'll go gray from worry." But me? I only had this old Honda and passengers who sometimes threw me a smile. That night I was driving her, a young woman, maybe 25, with dark hair and eyes like coal. She got in at a bus stop in town and I couldn't take my eyes off her. "Where to?" I asked as I pulled away. My voice trembled slightly, but the fog muffled everything. "Cedar Lane, please," she answered, adjusting her jacket. Her voice was soft, warm. She sat in the back and I glanced at her through the mirror. Beautiful, I thought. The kind of girl who might actually like me someday. "All right, I know the way," I muttered, turning onto a narrow road. The fog thickened, visibility dropped to just a few meters. "Where are you coming from this late?" "University, I had evening classes," she said, pulling out her phone. "I study biology at UBC, got caught up in the library." "Biology, huh? Impressive," I said, smiling at her reflection. "You're a smart one." "When I was your age, all I did was drive. My mom used to say I was wasting my life on this taxi." She chuckled softly. "That's sweet. Your mom worrying." "Mine's the same way, always calling like she's tracking me." "Oh, my mom's next level," I replied, watching her more than the road. "When I was 20, she wouldn't let me go to parties. 'You'll get lost, Danny.' Now she calls every day, asks if I've eaten." Her laugh was like music. My heart swelled. Maybe it was foolish, but at that moment I thought we could talk like this forever. "What about you? Anyone besides your mom?" she asked, tilting her head. Her eyes shimmered in the mirror. "No, never really had. You know, anyone," I admitted, feeling my face heat up. "Taxis are my life. People get in, they get out, and I keep driving. I looked at her lips as she smiled. The road was empty, the fog thick, and I couldn't focus. You probably have a boyfriend, though, huh? No, not right now, she said, lowering her gaze. Lately, I've been focusing on school. Whoever gets to be with you would be lucky, I blurted out. In my head, I already pictured it. Coffee dates, walks, something I never had. I didn't see the shadow on the roadside until it was too late. A loud thud, tires screeching. Something hit the hood. I yanked the wheel. The car swerved. What was that? She gasped, sitting up straight. My heart stopped. I pulled the taxi over, my hands shaking. Nothing. Probably an animal, I lied, though my mind was already spinning. The fog swallowed everything. I couldn't see what I'd hit. A deer or a fox, maybe. Are you sure? It sounded different, she said, peering out the window. We should check. No need, I muttered, driving on. Sweat dripped down my back. I didn't want to know what it was. In the mirror, I saw her frown, but I kept going. Just an animal, I repeated, though something in my gut told me I was lying. Where did you learn to drive? I asked, desperate to change the subject. My voice wavered, but I tried to sound calm. At UBC, I told you, she said, still uneasy. And you? How long have you been driving? Forever, I said quickly. My mom always told me to do something else, but I love the road. I searched for that smile from earlier. A sharp ringtone broke the silence. Her phone. My stomach twisted. Oh, it's probably my mom, she said, reaching into her bag. Don't answer, I blurted too quickly. My heart pounded. The fog in my mind was as thick as on the road. She looked at me, puzzled. Why? It's just my mom. I have to answer. Not now, please, I said gently, but my palms were sweaty. Let's just talk a little longer. Don't ruin this. My head was a mess. What if it wasn't an animal? What if someone saw? I have to, she insisted, pulling out her phone. The screen lit up her face. Give it to me, I shouted, panic taking over. Now! I reached for it, but she recoiled. What the hell are you doing? She cried, eyes wide with fear. You're scaring me. Put it on speaker, I growled, stopping the car. The fog wrapped around us like a wall. Answer it, but put it on speaker. I was losing control. Everything was unraveling. Her trembling fingers pressed the green button. Hi, Mom, she whispered. Emily, where are you? A frantic voice shrieked. Your cousin Matt. He was hit by a car. He's in the hospital, barely alive. The words stabbed through me. Cousin, roadside. The fog spun in my head. Emily's face drained of color. What? She screamed. Where? Near Cedar Lane, half an hour ago, her mother sobbed. The police are looking for the driver. I ripped the phone from her hand and ended the call. You did this, she shrieked, fumbling for the door handle. Locked. Calm down, I shouted, grabbing her arm. It was an accident. I didn't mean to. My mother's voice echoed in my head. Danny, be careful, or you'll do something stupid. Now I had done something. She struggled, punched my shoulder. Let me go, you monster. The door gave way, and she tumbled into the fog. I ran after her, my shoes slipping on the wet grass. The mist was everywhere. I could barely see a meter ahead. Come back, I yelled, sprinting. Panic squeezed my throat. I caught her, grabbed her jacket, and we tumbled to the ground. She kicked, screamed, but I pinned her down. Stop, I panted. You can't tell anyone. Do you understand? It was an accident. In my head, I saw her smile, her laugh. Now all I saw was fear. The fog swallowed us, as if trying to hide my sins. The police found us later. Someone heard the screams. Emily survived. I ended up in cuffs. Matt lived, but I never forgave myself for that night. My mother called afterward, sobbing. Danny, what have you done?